The Eagles just lost another huge piece in free agency. A bit of a surprise as it comes later on here in the week, but ultimately the details of the Eagles strategy have been revealed. The question is it the right one? Also, looks like another big trade could be in the works very soon. Fans torn at the decision, but we'll see if Howie has another trick up his sleeve. We'll get into it all, but welcome into A to Z Philly. I'm RB. Do me a favor, like this video, go down below. Subscribe to our channel and ring the bell. Don't miss any of our coverage. So we will start it off with a gathering of signings that have happened since the last time we spoke. I mean, the Eagles have just been rallying off these deals later on here in the week. And it's funny, they're all one-year deals. Howie's got a plan, okay? We started off with Adoree Jackson, a cornerback formerly of the Giants and the Titans, signed on a one-year deal. Maybe some depth, maybe could be CB2 or just a little bit of competition for the young squad and Keely Ringo. Also, the Eagles sign another long snapper. Charlie Hewlett is the Eagles' new long snapper. Shout out to the legend, Rick Lovato. I've noticed that the Eagles usually keep long snappers for like 8 to 10 years. Rick is a two-time Super Bowl champ. Shout out to Rick Lovato. Also, Eagles yesterday signed a tight end, Kylan Granson, guy who maybe had a little bit of interest from some other teams, former fourth-round pick. Didn't do much last year, only had, I think, like 180 yards, but definitely a lot of potential. Has never been the guy. Maybe this signing of a tight end could lead to something. Is it signaling something? The Eagles also signed another tight end the day before, so we'll see what happens there. The Eagles end up bringing back their former linebacker who was with the Giants this past year, Patrick Johnson, on a one-year deal. I believe he was drafted by the Eagles a couple years ago. Maybe he was undrafted, but thought he was a late-round pick. They kept him for a year or two. Then he was waived, went to the Giants, but Patrick Johnson back in the building. And Eagles signing a kick return, punt return specialist, Avery Williams from the Falcons. This might mean the end of Britton Covey. We'll see what happens there. But last night was the last big domino of the week, and ladies and gentlemen, it is official. Mekhi Becton is not coming back to Philadelphia. Mekhi Becton signs a 2-year deal with the LA Chargers. And man, just first and foremost, I am going to miss this guy a lot. I'm going to miss this guy, his energy, his attitude, and how dominant he was on the field. I'll never forget that play, where he literally tosses the guy with one hand. Saquon's running behind him, all the room in the world. That's how dominant he was. What a comeback story. We talk about Zach Bond and guys like that. How about Mekhi Becton, man? I mean, from literally being called a bust, being called too slow and fat, to being a champion. So shout out to him. And I thought, as this went on later in the week, I thought Becton was kind of, negotiating, but also feeling like, hey, I want to go back to Philly. I love Jeff Stoutland. He's been very vocal about that. I thought he was going to return as this got later in the week. The other possibility was maybe his market wasn't as big as we all thought it was. Now, we have not received the financial implications here, right? We don't know the annual value. My guess would be maybe in the 10 million range, but maybe it was less. And if it was less, I'm still going to question why the Eagles did not bring Mekhi Becton back. So here's what I think is going on with Howie Roseman. The Eagles have now lost this offseason. Becton, Isaiah Rodgers, Milton Williams, Darius Slay, Josh Sweat, Oren Burks, Kenny Pickett, CJ Gardner-Johnson, Kenny Gainwell, and Rick Lovato. When you take a step back and you look at it overall, you're like, not too bad, right? We expected them to lose guys. Here's my thing, though, man. It just feels like the Eagles are the punching bag right now. And what I'm seeing Howie Roseman do, and honestly, I think it could end up really, really good or really, really bad. But I trust in Howie Roseman. I think he has earned that. We've seen him build multiple, 3 Super Bowl caliber rosters. So I trust in Howie, but I'm kind of mad right now, Howie, because the Eagles win the Super Bowl. They are the most dominant team in the NFL. This wasn't like 2017-18, where, let's be honest, they had destiny on their side. They were a great team, but, Wentz gets injured and Jason Peters and all these guys are going down. But the Eagles were not losing a game, right? It just felt like they had everything on their side. This year was different because the Eagles just steamrolled through everybody. They dominate Pat Mahomes and Andy Reid on the biggest stage, completely eviscerate them, and they're not even close to getting beaten. And I'm looking at the Eagles right now, and I'm like, yo, we're talking dynasty. This team could stick around. This team could mesh for a couple years, right? So the Eagles lose a lot of their pieces. Now, the good part is that they have a lot of their core guys locked up, especially on the offensive side. But you're looking at a defense who was number one in the NFL, widespread. Vic Fangio was amazing. Maybe they believe his system can cycle in and, rotate new guys in, especially younger players. And I believe he can. That's how good he is. But it does suck seeing every single guy that we thought had a chance to leave go. And on top of that, you trade C.J. Gardner-Johnson, which I still don't really understand. But, man, I mean, it kind of takes a hit. It kind of stinks that you're going to have all these new defensive starters. But nonetheless, got to trust in Howie Houdini. And it is, I just think what Howie's doing is that he's trying to create a new window for the next 2 to 3 years. And I almost think he's looking at it like we might take a bit of a step back this year, but we're still good enough to compete. Are we good enough to win it all? Who knows? Maybe another couple of teams will get better. I think Howie's looking at it like we still will probably get better as we move forward, but the next 2 to 3 years, we're going to be able to pay Jalen Carter and Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean and all the guys that we really love in terms of these young studs. So that's how I think he's looking at it. But Howie did preach to us, be patient. The offseason doesn't end now at free agency. You have the draft, you have training camp, guys get cut, trades can happen, things like that. I will say, though, after 2022, we saw this similar kind of trajectory, and we know it didn't go well in 2023. So I am a little bit nervous, but in Howie we trust. Now, the other thing going on right now is, according to Jordan Schultz, Eagles are open to trade talks involving Dallas Goedert and Bryce Huff. We talked about this last week. Now Bryce Huff is in this mix. I honestly forgot Bryce Huff was on the team. I mean, your highest paid defensive player, healthy scratch in the Super Bowl. And I do think Howie will try to move on from him. If not, maybe this guy can resurrect his career, right? Maybe he could be a piece that you already have here, but they might have to even give up some, draft capital to try to get off his contract because it is brutal. But as it relates to Dallas Goedert, I said it last week, I'll say it again. I think trading Goedert would be a mistake. I really do. Now, if the Eagles were to trade Bryce Huff, their pre-June 1st cap hit, lose $5 million in cap space. Post-June 1st, gain $4 million. 5 number isn't enough to stop the Eagles if they get a return they think is good. So everybody thinks that Bryce Huff is on the way out, but in terms of Dallas Goedert, I'll say it again, man. Like, Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz, their situations are not the same. You traded Ertz when he was 30, but you had already drafted Goedert. He had already been playing pretty well, showing that potential to be a number one, and that was already for a couple of seasons. Right now, if the Eagles trade Dallas Goedert, they have no replacement, right? They sign Granson, they sign another tight end, but they really don't have that guy, And again, Dallas Goedert is an amazing playoff player. He has showed up big time when it matters the most, and he's made big play after big play. I know he doesn't play full seasons. I know he gets injured. And, I honestly think the Eagles shouldn't tie up that much money to Dallas Goedert. I know his agency probably wants a new deal, but if I'm the Eagles, I offer, maybe a 2-3 year deal, some non-guaranteed money on the back end, keep him around for what you can the next year or two, draft his replacement this year, let the guy develop just like Goedert did from 2018 to 2020, and then in a couple years, you trade Dallas Goedert. Easy as that. I do not think that the Eagles should trade Dallas Goedert and break up the chemistry. You know that Dallas Goedert is one of Jalen Hurts' security blankets. He, really appreciates him. He's comfortable with him. And I just don't see a replacement right now. So I do not think they should trade Dallas Goedert. And I hope they don't. But from everything we've heard, it feels like they're getting ready to move on. And that's just been the theme of the offseason with all these guys. And again, it just kind of takes a hit when you win a Super Bowl and you're that dominant and you start rattling off every piece. Maybe Howie Roseman's just mad that a fan hit him with a beer can. Or maybe he's got a master plan up his sleeve. Because think about this, last year, the Eagles, didn't have a solid future laid out for Josh Sweat, right? He was about to get traded. They were in trade talks with him. Then they decided to bring him back. Milton Williams was coming off a season with 0.5 sacks. Zach Bond was signed late, was supposed to be an edge. We saw what Vic Fangio did with him. Mekhi Becton wasn't signed yet, and Isaiah Rodgers hadn't played in a year. So, Howie Roseman is good at kind of getting his hands into the weeds here and finding some secret gems, but we have to hope that he can do it again, and he's really relying on his draft because now the Eagles have 20 draft picks in the next 2 years. Plus, when the comp picks are laid out, who knows if they'll get one for Becton, but, they have a lot of draft capital. So Howie's really lining up here if he can replicate what he did the last 4 years in the draft to maybe create that dynasty that everybody is talking about. But, you do have to take a hit right now. You do have to pay certain players here in the next couple years, and you have to make those tough decisions. Now, again, I don't think every decision's been perfect. I understand overall like where his head is at, but losing, Gardner Johnson, Becton, even if they did everything that they have this offseason, but kept CJ and brought back Becton, I'd say, you know what, perfect offseason. I'm good. Little bit concerning. But at the end of the day, they go ahead and they bring in a lot of these one-year deals. A.J. Dillon, Josh Uche, the other tight end, Harrison Bryant is the one they signed. New long snapper, Adoree Jackson. Howie Roseman right now is pretty much like a guy who's like, I'm going on vacation in a couple years. I want to take a huge trip to Europe and I want to go to all these places. But for now, I have to stop eating out. I have to cut corners, stop going out buying junk food, and really cut my corners and make sure I'm ready for that big vacation in a couple years. All the jokes have been saying Howie's going shopping at the discount mart. I don't know, man. But at the end of the day, Howie got to make something happen. And Howie we trust, and the Eagles fans don't want to take a step back. They want to get back to the Super Bowl this year. We'll see if they can do it. It's been a tough hit. It's been tough watching this, but if one GM can figure it out, it is Howie Roseman. So, ladies and gentlemen, go ahead and give me your thoughts down below in the comment section. Shout out to Mekhi Becton, forever a champ. Appreciate what he did. That being said, catch y'all on the next one.